Идите!
These are anti-war protests that were erupting around the world following Russia's invasion into Ukraine. As you can see, it's riot police here that were cracking down on these protesters, and these are protesters in the city of Moscow, Allison.
Yeah, meanwhile, Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov laying out an ultimatum for Ukraine as Russian forces advance into the capital city of Kyiv in Ukraine.
All right, we want to continue our team coverage now. Let's check in live with our Moscow correspondent Stuart Smith with the very latest developments happening in Russia. Stuart?
Yeah, well, we've just heard from the spokesperson from the Russian Foreign Ministry, who is now threatening Sweden and Finland as well, saying they will face detrimental military and political consequences if they attempt to join NATO. She said, "We regard the Finnish government's commitment to a military non-alignment policy as an important factor for security in Europe." The obvious implication being, if, like Ukraine, they express a wish to join NATO, they could be seeing scenes in their country just like this. Indeed, the Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov earlier saying to reporters that what's currently going on can only be resolved through negotiations with Kyiv, but the demands that Ukraine would have to accept would be almost impossible for Ukraine to do so. That refrain again from Russia that it must withdraw its application to join NATO, recognize these newly separatist regions as independent, recognize Crimea as Russian, and also withdraw all foreign military equipment from its soil. They proposed Minsk, the capital of Belarus, as a potential location for those peace talks, so-called peace talks. But at the same time, the Russian president earlier today, speaking to his Security Council, once again called the Ukrainian government Nazis and fascists, and implied that he would not be willing to speak to them as the de facto Ukrainian government. So it's not sure who Russia would be looking to talk to if indeed it is serious about some kind of diplomatic resolution to this conflict.
Very interesting development there, Stuart. Obviously, a lot of propaganda and state-run media there. Stuart Smith, live in Moscow. I appreciate it. It is incredible video coming into us. This is the aftermath of an aircraft that was targeted by a missile. And as you just saw, folks, it broke apart in the sky. This is the sky over Kyiv. Debris just raining down into a neighborhood there, a residential neighborhood in Ukraine.
Yeah, unbelievable video there. We're really seeing this war play out in real time with a lot of user-generated content. Here's another look at that attack from a different angle. Residents shocked and startled by seeing these ongoing attacks.
Joining us now to discuss the invasion by Russia is former Trump 2016 foreign policy advisor and Newsmax contributor, George Papadopoulos. George, great to have you here today.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Okay, so we want to show a map where Russia is in control here. So the red areas are all under Russian control. So Putin clearly making a very bold move. He wants to take Kyiv. It could fall at any hour over the weekends, it's expected. So this really is, George, a conflict Europe hasn't seen since the likes of World War II. Obviously something that Trump was able to handle, to navigate. And now we're seeing a complete flip side here with the Biden administration.
Well, the reason we are seeing a flip side with the Biden administration is because weakness has consequences, and elections, of course, have consequences. The weak, feckless, and really profoundly disastrous leadership of the Biden administration has really invited the single gravest threat to international peace and stability on the European continent, as you just stated, since the end of World War II. And what I think people might have forgotten is that during Biden's inauguration, he stated that the United States isn't merely going to lead by the example of its power, but by the power of its example. If you're Vladimir Putin today, what example has Joe Biden shown the world, especially dictators and autocrats, about American resolve and American leadership? Joe Biden has lost 2 U.S. embassies in a little over a year in both Afghanistan and Ukraine. He's completely abdicated all the U.S. traditional leadership role in confronting autocratic regimes. And it's no surprise that this weakness has invited Vladimir Putin to test America in the battlefield of Ukraine, in which he now is going all the way to Kiev while America and NATO sit back and watch.
Yeah, George, you know who else is watching is China. So Taiwanese fighters scrambled yesterday to intercept and warn off 9 Chinese warplanes that penetrated the island's declared air defense zone. We saw both presidents getting together, Putin and China's president, at the games. I mean, China's a concern. And even yesterday when President Biden was asked about China, he didn't really say anything.
Well, look, even in these very dire circumstances that we find ourselves in as a global community, China continues to remain the United States' political, security, and economic threat, their preeminent threat, I should say. And unfortunately, the reason that Putin is emboldened is because these sanctions, there's a lot of talk about sanctions that have been levied against Putin and his cronies. The sanctions that would have had teeth and a real impact regarding Russia would have been if the Europeans had done 2 things. 1, curbed oil imports, and 2, removed Russia from SWIFT. Joe Biden was unable to coalesce the Europeans to do this. Now, any sanctions that might be targeted towards Russia are simply going to align them furthermore with China. I believe China is watching Ukraine very closely. They think this is a test run to see how the West will respond, how America will respond to another great adversary moving in on a territorial ambition, historic territorial ambition like Taiwan is for China. And right now, the scenes are horrific. America looks weak, and China, I believe, will make a move.
George Papadopoulos, we thank you for your time and joining us today on really what is a historic news day as we watch possibly the fall of Kyiv. Thank you, George.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.